3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I fallen.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say
6,
6, 5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the 33rd episode of Rank and Review with our returning guest, the always awesome Karen Giese, our Rank and Review champion. This episode, we're going to find out what happens when animals attack. This is, as always, your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, and as usual, I'm going to remind everyone that there may be some naughty language, and there will definitely be spoilers for the movies discussed. If you would like to send feedback to Rank and Review, I would welcome you to do so. Please write me at rankandreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. You can also seek us out on iTunes, leave a positive review to help out the show. Thank you so much for listening to the 33rd episode of Rank and Review. Still the reigning champion.
I
33
know.
episodes later. What is going on?
I have listened to all of them, and I keep on hoping, kind of, that someone will win, but no one ever
No one's
does.
winning.
I know.
Are my tastes that random, do you think? Or is it just hard to get 6 things to line up, I wonder?
Subjective.
I guess.
I don't know.
I don't know.
know.
Well, you're back again, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled, and we're talking about when animals attack. We talked about in the past that you, not really great with people-on-people violence.
Yeah.
Really bad with people-on-animal violence.
Yes.
But completely okay with animal-on-people violence.
Who isn't, really? Seriously.
You just support the underdog.
I do.
Yes.
Oftentimes, they're not the underdog, though. Oftentimes, humans are screwed.
It's true. Did
you hear about that guy that got attacked and killed by a beaver?
A beaver?
Yes.
He was killed by a beaver.
Yes. Bit
I
him
did
in the
not hear
back of the leg and carotid artery and
Let him
done.
Don't fuck with a beaver, apparently.
Exactly. I found that amusing.
That's amazing.
Yep.
For me, what I like about them, or at least typically, is when they treat the animal fairly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I prefer it as people have entered their domain and the animals are just doing what they're doing, as opposed to treating the animal like it's a monster.
Yes.
Because there's monster movies for that.
Exactly.
And in a way, I can feel a little bit of pathos sometimes for the animal that's involved too.
Yeah.
I'm going to totally call myself out on being a hypocrite because I'm a huge fan of Jaws. And I think the shark in Jaws is still very much a monster.
Okay.
But, you could also interpret it. It's an animal. Animals need to eat. It found a food source, and it was eating. It wasn't personal, until Jaws 4. Because that time it was personal.
Right. Yes.
But,
nicely done.
yeah, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, the wildlife will get to you. We talked about this with bugs too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spiders will a tiny little benign spider will end your life with a little pinch.
Exactly. If threatened.
If threatened.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. You said it. Like, these animals, they are wild animals.
Yeah.
People are generally stupid.
Yeah.
Treat them with the respect that they deserve. Like, that's exactly what you said. They're going on instinct. They hunt, they kill, they survive. Done.
Yeah.
And
I think for the most part that's attempted in all but 2 of the movies that we're going to discuss here.
Okay.
I think the exceptions are, well, then we can talk about the titles, but the 2 exceptions as far as the animals being treated fairly realistically, I think would be Snakes on a Plane and The Birds.
Okay.
The Birds is based off of a novel, which I actually would be curious to read. I have not read it, but
No.
yeah, that one day inexplicably the birds decide they don't like us. And they attack.
That actually did happen to a friend of mine who was walking home from school one day and got chased and dive bombed by a murder of crows, like all the way home.
Yeah.
And she was booking it, and she was so upset, and I thought it was super funny. Not very compassionate,
I've had
I guess.
either a crow or some sort of black boy swoop down, and I swear it was trying to take a peck at the top of my head for some reason.
Yeah.
But my creepy murder of crows story. First few months we had this house. I was coming back from work really early in the morning. Came in through the back gate underneath the trees and past the garage. Just coming home, and I got almost all the way to the end of the garage and made my turn, and I stopped, and I turned around, and all along the eaves of my garage and all over the trees which I just passed under were crows,
Creepy.
and they were just sitting there staring at me, and I just shuddered. It was just like that ain't cool.
Creepy.
Other strange animal story, since we're sharing.
Since we're sharing.
Last summer, I found, on 3 different occasions, a dead squirrel in my yard. I have never seen a squirrel in this neighborhood.
Okay.
Ever. But last summer, 3 dead ones in my yard.
Badness does come in threes.
I guess?
I
I don't know. I think maybe the
Creepy.
crows did it. I have no idea. They're sending some kind of message. I don't know.
Bizarre.
Anyway. The movies that we are going to discuss, unless there's something else you want to add about animals eating people.
Nope. Just that I like it.
You do.
Yeah.
I regret that one of these isn't, in fact, The Ghost in the Darkness, so I could have called this episode Lions and Tigers and Bears. Dope! Missed
Sad.
opportunity.
Sad.
Next time.
Next time.
We have a film called Burning Bright about a young woman and her autistic brother who get trapped in a storm sort of shuttered house with a tiger.
Yes.
Sucks to be them. We have Rogue, about a very large saltwater crocodile who plague a bunch of tourists in Australia.
Yep.
We have The Edge, written by playwright David Mamet, about a billionaire and a friend, in quotation marks, a couple of friends who end up in a plane crash and have to deal with a tough little grizzly bear.
Yes.
Alfred Hitchcock's classic, The Birds. We have a relatively recent film called The Grey, starring 60-year-old action star Liam Neeson, about another plane crash in the Canadian North, I have to assume, where
I would assume.
a bunch of oil workers are plagued by a pack of wolves. And last, and arguably not least, maybe. We have the modern classic,
Yes.
Snakes on a Plane.
The modern cult hit.
Yes. So we're all over the place
We
here.
are, yeah. Quite.
And I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Starting
Excellent.
a safari ranch. I need a scary animal. That's what the tourists pay to see.
This cat, he's not scary. He's evil.
Tropical storm warnings are now in effect for all of the Gulf Coast. So we're looking at a strong Category 3, so board up those windows. There are emergency shelters being set up in King County.
In the middle of the night, an evil was brought to this house.
All right, Burning Bright.
Yes.
This movie is directed by a Carlos Brooks, and it's written by Christine Coyle Johnson and Julie Prenovoil-Roch. I hope I'm saying that correctly. As we discussed in the introduction, it has to do with a young woman who is left to care for her younger autistic brother. Her mother,
Basically.
we found out, has recently passed away.
Yeah.
And her stepfather, we find out, is a huge bastard.
Big, giant douche.
He has used the money that was left for her to buy a tiger so he can start this safari theme park
Yeah.
in Florida.
Technically, I think left for her brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the problems I have with the movie is how completely one-dimensionally, stupidly, blankly evil the stepfather character is. Like,
Yeah.
unbelievably so.
Sure.
But happily, he only really has to do with the very beginning and very end of the movie.
Yeah.
Basically, once this woman and her brother get locked in this mansion, which has been shuttered and boarded because of an oncoming storm, they come to realize they've been trapped inside
Every single exit
with a tiger.
is boarded. Yeah.
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 And she has real issues communicating with her brother, and he does not like to be touched, which adds further complications and another layer to it. So that's the basic premise. There's a storm outside, there's a tiger inside, desperate to get out,
Yeah.
desperate to protect this child.
Kind of.
Why is the tiger there? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
That is the premise of Burning Bright.
Yeah.
What do you think?
All in all, like you said, I thought the whole movie was kind of one-dimensional, kind of lame.
Oh, yeah.
I did thank Ye Her for second-guessing her second thought
Right.
of ditching the brother inside the house when she finally does get out. But yet then she had a crisis of conscience and went back in to save the brother. I just don't know how plausible all of this, like, the movie would be in general. That was my issue with it. Being science girl, I like plausibility, and I like stories based on fact, especially when it comes to other species like insects or animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the introductory scene that we have between Garrett Delhunt, who I think is actually a really good actor and deserved a better part than this, and Meatloaf.
Meatloaf!
Yes, who sells him this tiger, who is being sold from the circus because the circus doesn't want it.
Yeah.
Because it jumped its cage and killed a horse in front of an audience. And
Yes.
that's frowned upon in the circus.
It is.
So we know that the tiger has lived a bad life and that it's got a bit of a chip on its shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I still kind of on the tiger's side a little bit, because I can imagine, being a large cat stuck in a tiny cage.
Yeah.
You get your opportunity, you take it, type of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I would imagine that the stepfather, being who he is, didn't really feed it all that much before he let it go inside the house.
Well, that's where I take the issue, because I think in a way the movie is trying to make it like a reveal that he let the tiger in the house. Mm-hmm. But as the plot points have developed through this movie, who else would have done it?
Exactly.
Like some unknown third party decided to let the tiger into the house and board it in there?
Yeah.
He didn't want to deal with her. If she wanted to get litigious about what he'd done with the money, she'd likely win. He didn't want to deal with the autistic little boy, so he put the tiger in the house to kill him. Fine, don't hide that. Just let that, let him be that guy.
Yeah.
That way, when the reveal came later that he had done it, and more than that, he had been responsible for her mother's death, because he's not just a little bit evil, he's mustache twirling like evil, it wouldn't have fallen as flat.
Yeah.
But what I do think does work, and probably more than you do from what I've heard, is once we're in the house, locked in with the tiger, and this girl trying to figure out what the hell she's going to do.
Yeah.
And the continual problem of her brother, for no fault of his own, but he's constantly doing the wrong things.
Yes.
And when she tells him to be quiet, he's not amenable to listen to her, because that's just not how he works. And he's putting himself and her in more and more danger. But for me, I never really thought she was going to abandon her brother. She thought that she was. She thought it was in her, but I never really thought it was. She actually has a dream at one point in which she smothers her brother.
Over and over it was implied to me anyway.
Yeah.
That it was a recurring wish fulfillment.
Like, because she will, thing. Like they established, she tries to reach out to him and he will slap her in the face,
yes.
And she is sacrificing her future, basically, to see that he is taken care of.
Yeah.
And she's never going to get reciprocation for this.
No. She does at the end, though.
She does at the end, but at the time she's making these decisions, she doesn't know that, right? And in a way, that thing at the end, as nice a moment as it was, is a movie moment.
Mm-hmm. Which would probably never happen in real life.
Which would probably never happen in real life. And that's the struggle that she was dealing with, and I connected to. Her trying to outsmart and outthink the tiger, I think worked really well enough for me. Okay. It also helps that this movie is 86 minutes long. That
does help.
It's quick.
It is.
If it would have overstayed its welcome, I think I might have had more problems with it.
Yeah.
But because the premise is that simple. Tiger in the house, what are we going to do? Yeah. They don't overreach with it.
Do you think the tiger would have actually eaten the cell phone that she dropped?
I don't know. It's an interesting moment. She was trying to climb up a laundry chute, and she was holding herself up and couldn't hold on to the phone. It dropped to the ground. And that was the thing that sort of alerted the tiger to her presence.
Yeah.
we'd been established that the tiger hadn't eaten anything for a couple of weeks, and he could smell her.
Yeah.
She dropped something down there. I just figured he intuitively put it in his mouth and broke it. But again, I didn't overthink it.
Okay.
But I thought it was funny that they kind of made it a bit of a menacing moment, like he almost had done it deliberately. But in my head, he was just a tiger being a tiger for the most part.
Okay.
Another slight hit against it. At no point is she in the same room with a tiger at any point when this movie is being filmed. And as a person watching the movie, I could tell that.
Yeah.
There are other movies that we'll see in this where people are actually working in frame with the animals, or they'll have stunt doubles or something like that. But with a tiger, something of this size, there was no way to do it safely. And they got some really good green screen shots, and they had some shots where they gave the illusions of it. But I think that hurt it a little bit.
Okay.
But for the most part, I mean, it's not a rave review for me. I'm here to say that Burning Bright earns a solid C+.
That I don't know. From my standpoint, that might be a little generous.
That might be a little generous?
A little generous, yep. This was, we'll discuss the other movies, but this was one of the two that was like, you know, I saw the first 5 minutes and I'm like, okay, I'll just get it over with, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel disengaged with it. I'm like I said, I could tell that she was, when the scenes where she was supposed to be really close to the tiger, that she wasn't, and that hurt the suspense a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was with her. I was trying to think of ways she would get out of there. I do think if it was me, being the benefit of the fact that I'm like 6'4", I would probably be able to shoulder out one of those windows.
Yeah.
And you'd have to think adrenaline alone would eventually drive her to get through. I don't know how many nails they put on each one of those boards.
Yeah.
Or that there would be some kind of implement in the house that she used to either bash the board out or bash
really.
the tiger.
Yeah.
The wild card is the little brother.
Yep.
And he disappears. She doesn't know where he is, or if he's been eaten by the tiger for a large portion of the movie. And
a few times.
That's a thing, you know.
Yeah.
Like I would have been greatly surprised to see this little autistic child get munched by a tiger.
Yes.
Like if that had happened in the movie. But I wasn't safe enough in the movie to say that it wasn't going to. I was 100% sure that our main character was going to get out of this alive, but I was actually getting to a point where I was wondering if her brother would. Let's move to the end of the movie then.
All right. Poetic justice.
Poetic justice.
Yes. The, super spoiler.
Yeah, spoilers heavy. Here we go.
Yeah. The stepfather gets munched by the tiger.
Yeah, indeed. And he comes into the house armed, obviously, telling us he knows what's going on, expecting to find a couple of bodies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. And the confrontation that happens between his stepdaughter, his former stepdaughter, however you call that crazy relationship.
Yeah.
Again, it's supposed to be a series of reveals, and all of the reveals are things that we already know.
Yep.
So all I was doing for that scene was waiting for this man to get eaten by a tiger.
Pretty much.
Which happily...
It did happen.
He does.
Nice.
And it is the one moment of the movie that actually does feel quite brutal. And maybe the one time where I would almost believe that there was an actor with the tiger. Because when he gets dragged away, not necessarily the initial lunge attack, but when he's on the ground and out of it and it drags him down the hallway, that looked brutal. And that looked like, he's going to be eaten alive by a tiger. And that would really be a horrible way to go. Getting mauled to death by anything, I think, would be freaking horrid. One of the worst ways. It feels almost like this could be an episode of The Twilight Zone or Amazing Stories, and sort of like the ABC of it.
Yeah.
The fact that everything is so set up and knocked down, and just the sort of vibe of the story, how it all ties into a nice little bow the way it never does in real life, you know? But that's what makes it sort of a C+ movie, as opposed to like, I was not surprised by the movie at any point necessarily, but I wasn't bored. It sounds like you were bored.
I don't know if I would say bored, but I don't know. It didn't really resonate with me, but I've seen worse.
Alright, shall we move on then?
Sure.
Cruise from here.
So one of the rules of my tour is that you have only one chance to complain about the heat and the flies.
I'm a travel writer for a magazine.
How long are you out here anyway?
Oh, just a few days. Alice Springs after this, then home.
Where's that?
Chicago.
The saltwater crocodile. It's probably the most dangerous member of the crocodilian family. So they can swim underwater at up to 20 miles an hour without making a ripple on the surface. And they can burst out to attack with incredible speed. Don't worry, man, we're perfectly safe on this boat. They won't attack anything bigger than they are.
How big is this boat?
Big enough.
This is a bloody tidal river. Well, that's how high the tide will be when it comes in.
Greg McLean is an Australian filmmaker who made his name doing this horror slasher movie called Wolf Creek, which every horror fan in the world seemed to like except me.
There you go.
So his follow-up a couple of years later, Rogue, comes out, and it's about a giant saltwater crocodile trying to make a meal out of a bunch of tourists in Australia. Didn't necessarily hold a lot of excitement for me, and I gotta say, right out of the gate, I was kind of pleasantly surprised by the movie when I watched it. Not only just because I wasn't a big fan of the first movie that the man done, but the character in Wolf Creek, who does a lot of the awful killing, is played by John Jarratt. That man is also in this movie as the nicest old fellow who's just on this tour to spread his wife's ashes, and he's like this most benign, sweet fellow. And it was interesting seeing that after seeing him play such an utter, evil, despicable person in Wolf Creek. The tone of this movie is much different than Wolf Creek too. Wolf Creek is sort of probably what we'd categorize in the torture porn category of film, in that the deaths in it that are depicted are horrifying and real and bad.
That's probably why I haven't seen it.
It's not my cup of tea as a rule, but I want to explore every corner of the horror genre, and torture porn is one, and animals eating people is another. So here we are.
Done.
Basic plot is there's about 8 or 10 tourists on a boat being led by Radha Mitchell. Seeing some beautiful... Radha Mitchell, thank you. Who in herself is kind of a scream queen. She seems to love the horror genre. She does a lot of scary movies. So
yeah, including the video game one.
Silent Hill. Yes,
Silent Hill.
Absolutely.
Horrible movie.
But beautiful, but horrible.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see her actually using her Australian accent. She is an Australian actress who you never actually get to see using her own accent.
That's funny.
And she sort of established herself as cool and charming. I would have instantly liked her. Just once you're on the boat, you get one chance to complain about the heat and one chance to complain about the bugs, and then you're done. And I don't know, she seemed like a cool person. And Michael Vartan plays this American tourist and sort of holiday journalist, travel log type of guy, and he is also taken in by her. They're not really flirty, but you can tell that they like each other.
Yes.
And so the adventure begins.
There you go.
The movie takes its time. We get to know a lot of its characters, and typical flags of things going wrong on an adventure happens. They go off the beaten trail where they were supposed to be, where everyone knows where they are. They have to go out of their way to respond to a signal fire. And they meet some locals who seem less than friendly. And they are told stories of what these crocodiles are capable of. Mm-hmm. And it's almost 40 minutes into the movie. Before shit hits the fan.
Mayhem, yeah.
And I think that helps the movie a lot. For me, we know these people at least a little bit. All of them we know at least a little bit before the shit hits the fan. And that helps us engage and sort of feel for them. Either for them like, oh, that sucks, or to be frustrated for the choices they're making. As far as survival scenarios go, I thought that the people behaved fairly realistically.
I agree.
And I don't encounter that a lot, so I valued that. But I'm willing to hear second opinions. So what did you think of Rogue?
I mean, it did have some good points. I did like the fact, as you said, that they did a little bit of background on all the people. Like, they didn't delve right into the action, which most movies do, which is part of my beef with it, because it's all action, no substance. This one was a little bit different. There were, like, some inconsistencies and inaccuracies regarding the alligator's behavior. Like, it wouldn't seek and destroy like it did.
Right.
It just wouldn't. They generally, it just ate that big, huge creature. And now it's going for just to kill. I don't believe that they...
They try to justify it in that they say they can be very territorial. And this
Sure.
was a length of river that they weren't supposed to go in, so it hadn't been traveled a lot.
Okay.
Somebody went down there that shouldn't have. Their boat got hit. They set off a flare. Our boat sees the flare. They go there, but by the time they get there, the person with the flare we never meet or see, so we have to assume they met a bad end.
Done. Yeah.
But they see a boat that has been knocked over and sunk into the water, and while they're looking at that, their boat is hit in a much similar way, we have to imagine.
Yeah.
For me, the most unrealistic, quote-unquote, thing about Rogue is just the size of the creature.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably, like, and saltwater crocodiles can be huge.
Yes.
But this one is huge by that standard, right?
Yes, exactly.
But I will give that dramatic license to the movie. And the fact that it, decides to be that aggressive and territorial is maybe not realistic to the animal, but it's helpful for the movie.
It is helpful for the movie, yes.
So I'll give it a pass. I also really like the plot point because when the boat is hit and they have to ditch on this island, they soon realize it's a tidal river.
Yep.
And that the island that they have landed on is going to disappear.
Yes. Yep.
As the hours go by. So it puts them on a very real clock.
Yep.
They can't sit there and wait to be rescued. Not an option.
Yeah.
So I like that
too.
one.
That was a good point. I mean, it's you got to do something to keep the story going, and that was a really unique way to do it. I think. I don't think I've seen something quite like that before, where you absolutely have no choice. It's not like you can go into a room, close the door, and you're semi-safe. It's you're either going to die by drowning or wait until the tide comes up, your island disappears, your safety net disappears completely. So you have no choice at all but to do something.
I mean, sooner or later you're going to have to get in the water. That choice has been taken from them.
Yeah.
And what I really connected to is I put myself in the position and asked myself, if I was there, would I be a friend or foe to this group? Some people end up, causing infighting. Yeah. Some people make selfish decisions, and it costs everybody. And, even the Jean Girac character that I said that we like, he has a little temper tantrum when they get on the island, which is understandable. Like, I understand it. But another guy goes to pull him away from the water's edge, and while they're having that little tussle, he is taken by the crocodile. And Jean Girac didn't intend for that to happen, but it happened.
Yes.
Because he was having his little moment. And we see those sort of innocent mistakes costing real lives happen again and again in the movie. And I kept on thinking, God, I hope I wouldn't be that guy who insisted on getting on that rope that's already got too much weight on it.
Yeah.
But he still just had to get on the rope because he had to, he wanted to get across.
That was really a realistic
portrayal,
absolutely. I think, some people are just like that. Some people, in the face of danger, automatic panic, and regardless of the outcome, will put themselves ahead of everybody else, and more often than not cause havoc for everybody else.
But what was interesting is there wasn't necessarily one Cooper character who was just the all-out asshole. It seemed like everybody got to take their turn being the asshole at some point. Sam Worthington shows up in this movie. This is before he was famous role. He sort of plays like an Aussie asshole, and when we first meet him, we're not sure if he's a friend or foe. Yeah. Turns out he's a helpful guy to have around because he's super brave and he knows a lot about these crocodiles. Doesn't pan out that well for him, but before he exits the film, he manages to spread this rope across from the island to the side of the bank on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
And like I say, the woman who's lost her husband insists on going first. And they let her go first, and she gets halfway across, and she freezes.
Yeah.
Intensely frustrating. More frustrating is that the father now, after that, who just wants to get his daughter's safety, upon seeing this woman freeze, says, fuck it, I'm going to get on that rope. And if I have to shake her off the rope to get past her, I will, because we have to get off this island.
Yeah.
I understand and yet hate that decision. And I'd like to think that I wouldn't make that decision. But if I'm on the island with my kids, I want my kids to fuck off that island too. Yeah. And the fact that that woman, A, insisted on going first, and B, is now frozen in the middle of the rope, not moving, would drive me insane, right? So I'm not unsympathetic to him either. The fact that it's not black and white points.
Yeah. That goes again to the character development, which, again, was appreciated. Yeah.
I also was surprised, considering the amount of people that we have on the boat, how many people make it through the movie.
Mm-hmm. A fair number, and it's not your typical the heroine and hero win the day.
Again, when you get to the third act, we do get, I think, to some more familiar ground.
Yeah.
Once we get the bulk of the survivors to the other end of the bank, we kind of abandon them, all except for Michael Vartan, who ends up chasing this dog through the wilderness. We find out it was for all the good because the dog was sniffing out Radha Michelle. Radha Michelle sacrifices herself, essentially. She starts swimming away from the group to lead the crocodile away.
Yeah.
And it's at that point in the movie, and I'm still liking the movie, that we start to enter movie cliche land.
Yeah.
The crocodile takes her, but does not kill her.
That's not true.
That's...
I don't think... Yeah, I'm pretty sure they kill.
Yeah. A creature that size would kill the person and put it in the cave. It hasn't wounded anyone that we've seen, but we like Radha Mitchell.
Yeah.
And so she is wounded and taken back to its hole.
Yes.
Okay, gap number one. They also established her. She's the local. She knows the land. She's tough. She's got spirit. She's our sort of protagonist. Michael Vartan doesn't know this place at all.
Yeah.
And yet he still has to enter the lair of the dragon, save the maiden fair, and slay the dragon. Mm-hmm. I kind of would have almost preferred it if Radha Michelle had gotten to kill the creature.
Me too.
But by that point, I'd liked the movie enough that it was a positive review. And I gotta say, even when he gets into the huge lair of the beast, which is way bigger than I think any crocodile lair would be, there's some genuine suspense there.
Yeah.
Like
their dens, I believe, are generally as long as they are.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it.
That's all I need.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't need a mansion.
No.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But if as far as something to film in,
yeah.
I get it.
Yep.
I get the decision.
Sure.
But I guess what we're saying is the deeper into the movie we go, the less reality we feel.
Yeah.
But it starts pretty real.
Yeah.
And I think if it had sustained that realism all the way through, it might have been at the very top of the list for me. And that surprises me.
Wow.
It didn't sustain that reality all the way through. I'm saying if it had, it might be at the top of the list. But that's strong praise for a giant crocodile movie made by a filmmaker I'm not a fan of.
There you go. Based on the one movie, though.
He's made Wolf Creek 2, I believe, as well. I have not seen Wolf Creek 2, so I guess I shouldn't grow without seeing it. But
yeah, I guess. As we all know, the sequels are usually so much better.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Rogue? I feel like I kind of talked over you.
No, I just kind of... I mean, it's an okay movie. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anyone, but if you're...
Would you tell them not to watch it?
No, I wouldn't tell them not to watch it.
So you're kind of indifferent.
I'm kind of indifferent. That is a really good place to be.
But when civilization disappears...
Why do we even think they'll come looking for us?
Our friend's a billionaire. You know what happens when you misplace one?
all they have is each other to rely on.
Most people lost in the wilds, they die of shame, because they didn't do the one thing which would have saved their lives. Thinking.
Their will to survive. And the question...
Why would I want to kill you, Charles? Why would I want to do that?
For my wife.
Of where the greatest danger lies.
Take it easy, Charles. It's okay. You got it, Charles. Come on. Just keep coming. Come on, Charles. Come on.
So I mentioned in the introduction that I have a love-hate relationship with David Mamet. I do think that he has written some pretty smart plays, and I was in Glengarry Glen Ross in university and had a great time playing Moss and getting to scream and say fuck a lot on stage, you know? Yeah. And that's great. I think that especially his screenplays are pretty spotty. In this case, he's sort of taking on the classic adventure story, and he's going for the real, I don't know, the male exploring himself or going through a ritual trial of nature. And some of it, I think, is a little bit heavy-handed.
Yeah.
But some of it, I think, is pretty awesome. So it's tricky.
Yeah.
It stars the still at the time very hot off of The Silence of the Lambs, Anthony Hopkins, and the only Baldwin of any value, as I call him, Mr. Alec Baldwin, who by all accounts is a difficult personality, but I will say I have never had a problem with him as an actor. I think that he's a solid actor. Maybe not someone I'd want to drink a beer with, but I'll watch him in a movie.
There you go. To each their own opinion.
I felt like you had something that you wanted to say on the Baldwin.
Yeah.
Do you want me to get the plot out first? Or
Yes,
okay. Anthony Hopkins plays a billionaire who was flown to this remote Alaska location to be with his supermodel wife while she gets some photos taken.
Yeah.
And
by Alec Baldwin.
By Alec Baldwin. Who's
Yeah.
Bob, the photographer.
Bob.
And you get the feeling like Anthony Hopkins' character is suspicious of not just Bob, but everyone.
Mhm.
He's one of these billionaires, so everybody wants something from him. And
Billionaire with an eidetic memory.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I watched this with my wife actually recently, and I said that this character sort of feels like the grown-up version of Good Will Hunting, in a way. Like they say, there's
Nice.
nothing about this character that we can learn that we wouldn't learn in a book.
Nope.
And he admits in the movie that his flaw is he has no imagination.
Mhm.
He can remember anything he reads, he's intensely intelligent, but
Yeah.
he doesn't have a lot of inner life. He doesn't have imagination, as he calls it. And he's sort of shaken out of this through this adventure that happens. They go off from their already remote location to seek out this hunter person to get some cool photographs. They get to where he is and find out he's out hunting, and they decide impromptu to go see if they can find this one dude in this vast wilderness.
Yes.
Kind of an unlikely scenario, but they're having fun and it's all light.
Yeah.
Until they have a bird strike. A flock of birds hit the airplane, it crashes into a lake, and they are in the middle of nowhere. And much like Rogue, they're not anywhere close to where they had said they were going to be.
Yeah.
So anybody who was looking for them was going to start looking in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
They're frozen, there's a mixture of snow and rain in the environment, and to further complicate things, a huge, vicious grizzly bear starts seeking them out.
That's right.
Only 3 people managed to get out of the crash.
Yeah.
The third is a friend of Bob's, played by Harold Perrineau, who's in everything. He's in Lost, he's in Oz, he's in one of the Matrix movies. He's one of these
Yes.
actors that you just see everywhere.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this movie, he's the black guy who dies first. But we get to know him. He's got a full character. He's in the movie for like an hour. It's not one of these tertiary sort of whatever roles. But it's just kind of unfortunate. It's
it
once
is
again
unfortunate.
the black character who dies first. Anyway, they don't trust each other, but they're going to have to learn to rely on each other if they're going to survive. And they're going to have to sooner or later face this adversary, which is clearly hunting them.
Clearly, and a lot bigger than they are.
Yes, a very serious adversary. So, what did you think of The Edge, girl?
I actually kind of liked this movie.
Yay.
I do have some science-y type problems with it. Okay. First being that the birds flying up and breaking the windshield of the plane would never ever happen. Those are like super, super tempered glass. Nothing can get through those guys. That was my first issue. And
that wasn't what brought down the plane, for the record.
it wasn't what brought down the plane, but didn't it kill the pilot?
The pilot didn't survive the crash. It wasn't clear exactly how he had died, but they jammed up the propeller. And the engine failed is what brought the plane down. And
Still.
as the flock kept on hitting the plane, yes, some of the windows were broken.
Yes.
And you're saying they're taking dramatic license for that.
Yes.
I thought it was a fairly believable crash as far as movie plane crashes go.
Maybe.
It didn't take me out of it, but
No.
I'm not Bill Nye, the science guy. So
yeah, I did. Yeah, for the most part, I did enjoy this movie. I did enjoy that they did, or that they stayed pretty true to typical bear behavior. I think it was like grizzly bear versus black bear.
Oh yeah.
That type of thing, and grizzly bears they're very aggressive.
Yeah.
I think it's the grizzly bears as opposed to black bears, which will just kind of...
Yeah. Apparently, and I do know a little bit about bears.
Excellent.
The worst bear you want to run into is actually not a grizzly, it's a polar bear. Apparently, if a polar bear commits to eating you, it will go out of its fucking way to eat you. Grizzly bears are very similar, and sort of like if they commit, if they decide that you're their next meal, you have a real problem on your hands. I'm terrified of sharks, and I think about sharks every time I swim in the ocean.
Yeah.
I'll walk any path in any forest, and I'm not particularly scared of bears for whatever reason.
No.
Particularly because, especially in Canada, 9 times out of 10, if you see a bear, it's a black bear, and you're seeing its ass as it's running away from you.
Exactly.
So, I would be horrified to encounter a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
And I think this movie realizes that on a couple of occasions really well.
Yes.
I think most memorably, there's a scene where Anthony Hopkins is attempting to fish with a little piece of wire and a piece of gold in this creek.
Yeah.
And then he just turns his head slightly and realizes that the bear is 4 feet from him.
Yeah.
Just staring at him.
Yes.
And he hadn't seen it until it was that close.
Yeah.
Fucking yikes.
Yes,
well
super
done.
yikes.
Well done.
Yes.
And that works really well.
Yeah, that did work really well.
I want to talk about our Baldwin boy.
Ooh.
Mr. Alec Baldwin.
Yes.
I think this is a big profile role, really. In his career, he doesn't get a lot of starring vehicles for some reason. He's usually like a supporting player or a villain.
Yeah.
And he himself has said he considers his entire movie career to be a failure.
Sad.
Which I think is ridiculous. Because if you've been in a couple of dozen high-profile movies, your film career isn't a failure, and shame on you for saying it. I think he gives a really strong performance here. And he's working off of... Yeah, he's playing off of Anthony Hopkins, and... on a given scene, you like or hate Bob, but I never didn't believe Bob.
No, I will give him that. I was actually really surprised that I enjoyed his performance as much as I did.
Yeah.
And that it was as... Well, I can't say that his performances aren't believable. It might be a real-life personality thing that is coloring my view of him, but...
There's a scene where a helicopter passes over them very close.
Yeah.
And they're in the trees when it comes, and there's no way for them to get to the helicopter so that it would see them in time.
Yeah.
And because they're so far away from where they were, there's no real reason to think that it would come back.
Yeah.
And he has a complete breakdown as a result of this. Yes. And I thought it was an amazingly done scene. In a way, I think that Alec Baldwin gives the performance of the movie. And he was working against Anthony Hopkins, who's solid.
Yeah.
But I think that this movie belongs to Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
Or arguably Bart the Bear, but maybe
Bart.
Alec Baldwin.
Yes. Who was in like every single movie involving a bear for
Yeah.
his whole lifetime. And now I think it's his grandson.
Yeah.
That's
Bart the Bear has been in a lot of movies, and he is a game player. He does good work.
Absolutely.
He's got a kind of recognizable droopy dog
Yeah.
like lip. He's sort of got a pouty lip on him. But he does great work. This was also shot, I'd like to point out, in around Canmore in Alberta.
Yes.
Which is a place where I
Partially.
vacationed. Yeah, partially.
Yeah.
And beautiful place. And,
gorgeous.
Yay, Canadian made, partially.
Yay.
So yeah, big points to Alec Baldwin and Bart the Bear.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take anything away from Anthony Hopkins. It's funny playing that character. Again, going to the Good Will Hunting comparison. He's a billionaire and he's hyper intelligent, so you'd think he'd be fascinating, right? But he's just kind of got this.
It's very
levelness to him.
Yeah, he's got like one level exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking that. And I mean, for somebody who's as smart as his character was supposed to be, the whole making the compass out of the needle and the silk thing, luckily he was wearing silk when trekking into the mountains, as most good mountaineers do.
He's a billionaire. He's a billionaire.
But, yeah, trying to make the compass when a smart guy like that should know, like survival skill 101, if you want to find the south direction, look for the moss on the trees.
Right.
And that's south.
Well,
Easy.
Survivor Man will tell you that that's not true.
Oh.
Survivor Man has said that everyone will say that moss will only grow on one side of the tree, and then he showed us a bunch of trees.
Dominant.
Yeah. But he showed us a bunch of trees and they were just covered in moss all the way around. But whatever.
There's got to be more than one tree.
There's ways to direct yourself to the stars and to the sides, and because he's such a red person, he's tried it. But I liked that they completely trusted his compass and that he fucked it up.
Totally fucked
He
it up.
realized later that he'd fucked it up.
Yeah.
But by that time, they'd spent a day walking in a huge circle.
Oh, yeah, after they got back to their own campsite?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah. And a great demoralizing moment for the group. They've traveled, they've run from a bear, they almost drowned in a river, and they end up, after all of that, right where they started.
They do, yes.
They're just more tired and more hungry than when they left.
Yeah. I guess one of the first really okay, the first really stupid move that they made was whatever guy hanging the bloody rags.
Yeah.
It's my friend Sarah and I were watching it, and she's like, "What are they? Idiots? That's like bacon for humans."
Yeah.
Like,
and over and above that, the Anthony Hopkins said, "You have to bury those."
Yeah.
Like, they were told not to do that,
Yeah.
and they did the exact wrong thing.
They did the exact wrong thing.
Everybody makes mistakes in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. And then the first smart thing that they really did was to actually start carrying the fire with them.
Yeah.
That was absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went through bear training.
That would be an interesting course to take, I can only imagine. Once they decide they have to deal with this bear, and they have a very dramatic and I think good payoff with the sequence where they fight the bear.
Yeah.
Fairly realistically, I thought. It wasn't like
I
Burning
thought too.
Bright, where I didn't believe they were in the same shot with the bear. I maybe didn't always believe it was Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins, but there was somebody interacting with Bart the bear, and it looked like there was a fight going. And I really appreciated that. I think where things get a little bit rocky for me is once the bear is taken care of.
Yeah.
And they find this cabin, and then it's just Bob with the billionaire.
Sure.
And Bob sees this opportunity.
Yeah.
He's in love with the billionaire's wife. And
yes.
they've been in this survival situation. He could very easily be disappeared.
Yeah.
But they've been through so much together that at that point I didn't buy him making that decision. And he struggles with it, and in order to deal with that, he just gets drunk.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I completely bought the turn. I think for me, and maybe this is a dude thing, if we've killed a bear together, we're officially bros.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to later that day
That's funny.
threaten to kill you with a shotgun.
Yes.
And that angle disappointed me. And they still did try to give some redemption to Bob's character, but I don't know. I found it unfortunate that they felt that they needed that extra. It couldn't just be a survival movie. They also had to throw in this It had to be man versus nature, man versus himself, and man versus man, all in one bucket.
Yeah.
And I put the blame for that on Mr. Mamet.
There you go.
You know, it's not as fuck heavy as some of his other scripts, and it's not as, you know, I'm going to take an uncomfortable nerve and I'm going to poke it and poke it and poke it for 90 minutes, which drives me crazy.
There you go.
And it doesn't always draw attention to itself. There's some of his plays, like Oleana, for the entire first act, no character completes a sentence.
Nice.
Like, it gets distracting. It goes from him trying to be real and making people talk the way people talk to it just becoming Mametverse.
Yeah.
And the Mametverse didn't take over the edge.
No.
It still worked as an adventure story, and the actors handled the Mamet dialogue well.
Yeah.
So, points there.
Points there. Just to go back a little bit, when
Bring
they
it.
killed the bear and they made themselves the bear suits,
Very well made.
I was super impressed with the tailoring
Indeed.
and with the fact that it wasn't just bloody as all hell and it looked like super tanned already, and I was very impressed with their
discussion with my
seamstering.
wife. Okay, I can buy that they could skin the bear and that they're eating the bear, but I can't buy that they could eat the bear and not be covered with blood. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, that was a little
It's
fetchy.
a note. And for me, I just said it probably was kind of gross on the inside, but at that point, they just didn't care because they were cold.
Yeah. I would have flipped it the other way, though. Like,
yeah, maybe put the fur against you, like
yeah,
the meat on the outside.
that would make more sense to me.
It also would make me wonder, I mean, Bart the bear couldn't have been the only bear in the neighborhood. Of putting
Right.
that stink out there might be a ringing the dinner bell for someone else.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
My only other small beef is the very, 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 very end of the movie.
Okay.
When Anthony Hopkins gets... Spoilers! Anthony Hopkins is rescued, and the helicopter lands just seconds after Bob has died. He finally
course.
bleeds to death.
Yeah.
Lose for Bob.
Yeah.
And he gets back to this remote post, and as he gets off the plane, there's a full cadre of press people and cameras taking pictures of him. And I understand that he's a billionaire and that this would be a
Sure.
story, but
Yeah.
even in this day and age of, you know, the media being completely cracked and arguably working against the good of the world, I didn't buy them having a press conference waiting for him.
Yeah.
and B, him answering any of their fucking questions. Like, I just got rescued after 4 days in the woods. My friends have been killed.
Yeah.
I'm here to see my wife, who I now know has been cheating on me. No,
Yes.
I'm not going to take the time to answer your questions. I'm just not. Maybe a week or a month or a year from now when I've processed this.
Sure.
But the movie ends with him giving a speech to all these cameras and saying that his friends died saving him. And it was like supposed to be an upbeat moment to sort of end the movie on, and it was the least genuine moment of the entire movie.
However, he is pretty stoic throughout the whole thing,
Yeah.
and pretty disjunct from emotions.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe
It was easy for him to do. Yeah.
perhaps it was like he's intelligent. He's a thinker guy. Analyze the situation. Emotions don't even come into it.
That's just me in a different sort of survival scenario. Like, if I'm Tom Hanks, who gets rescued off of my tropical island in Castaway, first thing I'm going to want is a fucking hamburger. And,
exactly.
like, just to hug somebody, because I've been alone for all of this time.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I'm just not going to, I have to do my public service, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, it didn't ring true to me. Maybe you're right. Maybe his character wouldn't give a shit about it, even after all he'd been through. But you get the feeling, like he says, I'm going to change my life. This thing, this adventure, this experience has somehow changed him.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's magically going to imbibe him with imagination, but
no, or feeling, seemingly.
But presumably he's going to divorce his wife, and he
Yeah.
is going to start living his life differently. But I'm in a vague way, like I don't know how this character will be different a year from now.
That's the thing with a lot of movies, though, is people expect the more upbeat ending.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work.
I have no problem with a bummer ending either.
Me neither.
I
think it's more
in a way,
realistic.
he survived. There was a survivor. It wasn't like
Mhm.
a completely dour tale. But
Yeah.
I like it.
I see. Good luck, Miss Daniels. Thank you.
Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Who are you? What are you? Where did you
I
come
love how everybody smokes in the 1960s.
Yes. Everybody.
Everybody
And
smokes.
a lot.
In fact, if you're smoking in front of someone, it's kind of rude in 1963 to not offer them a cigarette. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want a cigarette as well? Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds.
The Birds.
Alfred Hitchcock was inspired to make The Birds after reading a news account of a 1961 incident in Capitola, California, where thousands of sooty shearwaters smashed into houses. So says the DVD case of The Birds.
Right.
It's also based off a novel, which I'm trying to find the name of here somewhere. Daphne du Maurier. It's a suspense story about the day the birds decided that people were no good. I recently reviewed Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I don't know if you've listened to that episode yet, but we talked about the whole journey that happens in the first half of the movie to get to where the movie starts.
Yeah.
I think a similar sort of thing happens here with The Birds, in which this Tippi Hedren, our lead character, meets a handsome man in a bird shop and decides to stalk him back to his apartment.
Yeah.
And when he's not at his apartment, decides to stalk him back to his quaint hometown of Bodega Bay.
2 hours
and,
away.
Insinuate herself with his friends and family there.
Yep.
We were talking about this earlier, like, this is creepy behavior.
It's extremely creepy behavior, which would result in probably arrest nowadays.
Absolutely. It's kind of quaint, and you could say, oh, she's just sort of a charming romantic, but, with this day and age, looking at it through our lens, it's creepy if it's a girl, and if it's a dude, he's going to jail.
Yeah.
So
exactly
interesting.
Yeah.
But the main point, other than Tippi Hedren's character being a creepy stalker, is that we spend probably the first 40 minutes of this 2-hour movie getting her to Bodega Bay
Yeah.
before the shit hits the fan.
With the the really authentic car sounds. Love it.
Inadvertently hilarious sequence when she's driving down the highway and going down the curbs where they show the lovebirds in the cage sort of leaning to the left and right with the lilt of the road. It's just not convincing for a second.
Not at all.
Like today, that would be an insert shot in a comedy movie.
Yeah,
right?
it
But
would.
we were being asked to take that very seriously. Again, it's 1963. This is a long time ago.
Way
This is
different
a
mentality.
different world place, and I think you have to kind of approach the movie with that.
Yes.
I could just say, boo ha ha ha, people were strange back then. Look at that guy's goofy fucking sweater. I could do that, and I could just not enjoy the movie. But I want to take the journey of this movie, so I'm going to try and meet it halfway.
Yeah.
But once again, and I said the same thing with Psycho, because a lot of people who are Hitchcock fans will just assume that The Birds are on the list, so it's got to be the number one.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
The Birds is not going to be number one for me.
Neither for me.
I don't think it's horrible.
No.
I think that the concept is really strong, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to be said about it. But looking at it through the lens of today, I at the risk of sounding blasphemous, this is a movie that could be remade.
Yep.
I think that this is a Alfred Hitchcock movie that could be improved upon with modern special effects.
Yes. Although they did have some really good creepy bits.
Yeah. Which we will get into specifically as well. I don't know, I guess I mainly covered the plot. She comes to Bodega Bay to stalk this guy that she met.
Yeah.
And successfully, he seems into her.
Yes.
Despite her behavior.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the birds start to attack. Not just her, but school children.
Yeah.
And in a lot
Which is hilarious.
Yeah. A lot of suspense movie templates that happen to this, the local townsfolk just decide to blame her because it didn't happen until she started showing up and poking her big city nose around.
Yeah, exactly.
The small town.
Yeah.
Interesting faces to see. Jessica Tandy.
Jessica
Miss
Tandy.
Daisy.
Who is like forever an old woman.
Yes, she's the mother figure in this 1963 movie, much like she would be playing for the next 5 decades of her career.
Yep.
But it's kind of cool to see her there.
Yeah.
Veronica Cartwright is in this movie. She's like 12 years old. But yeah, she went on to do great things in Alien and Invasions of the Body Snatchers, and it's interesting to see her as a child actress here.
Oh yeah, and she often plays like the psychotic religious woman.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just a kid, probably thrilled to get a job and to be working with Hitchcock. Yeah, go team.
And yeah, it's Suzanne Plachette as well, who I've often enjoyed and was surprised to see her. I didn't quite recognize her at first, but yeah.
And I found myself enjoying some character archetypes. There is a wonderful scene. I think it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think my favorite we'll talk about later, but the birds have started to attack. They go into this restaurant in the middle of the small town, and everybody sort of huddles around the bar to talk about what the fuck is going on with these birds.
Yeah.
And this sort of old lady comes in who happens to be an ornithologist, and she knows everything about birds, and she's very condescending about it. And they're constantly being interrupted by the rummy in the corner who's saying, "It's the end of the world!" And everybody is playing complete archetypes, you know? And in another movie, it would really bother me, but I was really charmed by it. And I was also really charmed by how sort of the sweetness and quaintness of this town, and the mother is getting upset because her children are being scared by this conversation, and just the general politeness of everybody in the area. Before that scene's over, half of these people are dead. The town is on fire and attacked by birds again. The argument is conclusively settled when the birds attack them. Right?
Yes.
And sort of seeing that all play out. The artifice is obvious, and yet I have a huge smile on my face while I'm watching that scene.
That's funny. The fire scene. That will be involved in one of my favorite scenes.
Okay.
Is the fire part. Yeah.
Just the gas being...
Yeah, the gas and the whole... Everything that pretty much leads up to it. But the camera shots of Tippi Hedren while the fire is spreading is freaking hilarious. It's like, look right.
It's getting a little closer. It's getting
look
a little
center.
closer.
Cut. Look left. Cut.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was fantastic.
I did like it. And again, you can see you can see the artifice of it, and yet you love it. But to go to my favorite scene.
Yeah.
Miss Daisy, who was upset because her neighbor has been killed by birds, and she was unfortunate enough to be the one who find the body.
Right.
And she's worried for her daughter, so she asks Tippi Hedren to go pick up her daughter.
Yeah.
School's not quite done. So Tippi goes out to smoke a cigarette, and she sits on a bench.
Yes.
And we hear the children singing this lovely nursery rhyme in the background.
Yep.
And on the monkey bars climbing structure behind her,
that was great.
More and more birds start amassing behind her.
Yeah.
And it's one of these great suspense moments where we're seeing it happening and the character's not. She's just sitting there smoking her cigarette, listening to the kids singing. It's also a really fairly long sequence. Like, it's the kind of sequence that people wouldn't have the patience for today. But I love it. I love it. And then she goes into the school and she tells the teacher what's going on. And then they have to, like, make up the story to the kids. This woman is here and she wants to see us do our fire drill. And so anybody who lives close, you run right home. And everyone else, we're going to run right down that hill, you know. Yeah. And as soon as they get outside, shit gets real.
Exactly.
And by I say shit gets real, I don't know how convincing the bird attacks are necessarily.
But they were great.
Yes.
Attacking the necks. I loved it.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
And because it's children, because, you know, they seem... The birds were waiting for the children to be let out of school so that they could do this. Specifically, gives it real malevolent intent.
Absolutely.
And I remember seeing that movie at a young age, and that sort of... For the longest time, I thought, like, The Birds is amazing. I love The Birds. I've grown up a little bit, and I do recognize that it has flaws.
Yes.
When we reviewed Psycho, we talked about the hilariously inept and stupid remake that they did of Psycho.
The really bad one?
Yeah, but I don't know, like I said, I think that this could be redone. Better special effects and modernize some of the characters so that we can relate to them more. And I think this would be actually quite terrifying.
Yeah.
Now, as far as our theme about when animals attack, and what I say I like about when animals attack movies is people being somewhere where they shouldn't be and they encounter a shark, or they encounter a bear, or they encounter a tiger. This isn't what we get here.
In this
case,
different.
The birds just decide to attack us.
Yeah.
So it kind of distinguishes itself as being different in that respect.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard for me to compare and contrast with these other movies in that.
Yeah.
I definitely think The Birds is worth watching. It's a thumbs up review for me.
Yeah.
But it's one of those movies that you have to have the butt conversation about. You know?
Yes.
You should watch The Birds, but just know Tippi Hedren is a crazy stalker.
Yeah.
It's going to take about 40 minutes to really start to cook.
Yeah.
Once it starts to cook, it's really engaging and worth watching.
Yeah.
Like, it's 2 hours and I wasn't necessarily bored, you know?
No.
I had a good time with it. But I'm no longer foaming at the mouth over The Birds. There's stuff that I love, and there's stuff that's just dated, and I can't deny that it's not, you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of... Yeah, some of the things, you know, even surprised me for even being filmed when it was, that they would include certain, like the camera shot of her left, right, center, whatever. That's, I don't know. I would think maybe because today's audiences are vastly different from way back then, and I wasn't born then, so I have no idea how innocent people were back then. But it was the 60s.
Two plot elements, and it's one of the reasons I actually would be curious to read the original story. Mm-hmm. And I presume it was probably written well before 63. If
Daphne
it didn't
du
get adapted.
Maurier, absolutely, yeah.
Towards the end of the movie, there's a scene that's like out of every bad horror movie you've ever encountered, where Tippi Hedren hears a noise and slowly walks up the stairs to investigate herself, and then walks into a room and is attacked by the birds and has to be rescued, and like it's an intense sequence, and you're like, oh my god, is she gonna die? Like, it looks like she's getting just hammered, and she is deeply traumatized and very badly hurt by the attack. But I still have to ask, why in the world did she do that?
Yep.
What reason are we given for her to behave in that measure? Like, that was kind of dumb. And smaller, but equally problematic.
Yeah.
Veronica Cartwright, the cute little girl I was talking about earlier, when they're making their escape from the house, asks if she can bring the lovebirds with her.
Yeah.
They haven't hurt anyone, she says.
It's true.
I'm sorry.
They're
but
birds.
If I'm in that scenario...
Yeah.
Fuck no. You cannot bring those birds. We're taking this woman to a hospital.
Yeah.
She's been mauled by birds. She's traumatized. So no, we're not going to bring birds in the car. I'm sorry.
And I doubt that any sane child would ask to bring birds, considering
exactly
everybody has been mauled by birds.
As far as I'm concerned, the lovebirds are the only birds with a legitimate beef with the humans
Sure.
because they have to spend their lives in
Sure.
this tiny
Yeah.
cage. It's kind of a cute moment that she asks if we take the lovebirds, but the right answer is,
Is no.
I'm sorry. No, you cannot
It is
take the
not.
lovebirds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But again, the birds attack people, and it's a fun movie.
It is a fun movie. I think the reason given in the movie that the birds attacked is because there was a fog that came up and discombobulated them or something, which no.
It's sort of that sort of explanation reminds me of the meteor that passes close to Earth that they mention in Night of the Living Dead as a possible reason for the zombies.
There you
And
go.
really, they don't know. It's the media trying to give a reason.
Sure. This was the ornithologist, I thought.
Well, she was trying to explain why birds had acted mysteriously on other occasions, but at the time she was making that case, she didn't believe that the birds were attacking.
Yeah,
she doesn't
that is
believe
true.
that the birds are attacking until they do. And interesting, once they do attack, she doesn't, say, "Oh, I guess you're right."
Yeah.
She just stops talking. We don't hear anything more from her because, I like the birds, but I think that age is starting to wear on them a bit.
It is, yeah. And quite honestly, and it's really only Tippi Hedren and Veronica that I had the issues with. Veronica, yes, that was like probably one of her first roles. Tippi Hedren, this was her first acting role, or first speaking role.
in a movie, yeah.
But yeah, I thought, and I know it was also
Was it
the
a
acting
character
style
problem or an
of
acting
the time.
problem, though?
It was an acting problem.
Yeah?
Honestly, yeah. Most of the others were very convincing, and when you can tell that people are acting.
Yeah, there's an artist.
That's how I felt.
Especially in these old 60s movies, where people will deliver their dialogue in a strange, theatrical way.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you sort of have to take that on the chin. And
Yeah.
as cinema progresses, you sort of see less and less of it. But
Yeah. Realism in character, I guess, is something that I...
especially in situations as surreal as this, the more real you can play it, the better it is for selling the story.
Yeah, exactly.
We lead a fire, and we find food. If we don't move and work now, we'll all freeze to death.
Somebody will find us.
They gotta know that plane went off the radar.
Nobody's gonna find us. Not here. We figure out what way is south, and we start walking.
This will be one of those wild stories you tell at a party.
Listen, get up, get up.
Don't move. Stare right back at him. If we can get to that tree line, we can better defend ourselves. Go! Hold on!
You gotta be kidding me.
We can climb down.
If we follow the river, we got a better chance of finding shelter.
How are we gonna deal with this? We take them on, one at a time.
Okay, we're now going to talk about the Joe Carnahan film, The Grey, which has to do with a bunch of oil rig workers who suffer a plane crash in the frozen north. You have to assume this should be a Canadian movie in a lot of ways. This feels like it's a very Canadian story. Over and above surviving this horrible plane crash and dealing with all the wounded and dead around them, a pack of wolves seems to have either felt the threat of the territory or saw an easy lunch and decide they're going to make a meal of it. And the surviving members of this group have to decide what they're going to do to try and survive. It's again a very simple premise, similar like we've seen in The Edge and other this before.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There was some outcry about this movie a little bit in its
Huge.
portrayal about the wolves, saying that
Huge.
wolves are not evil. They're not these evil creatures like that. But I have to say, I didn't not buy the wolves in this movie. As far as I'm concerned, a bloody, wounded human being walking across the tundra is an easy meal for a wolf. I totally buy them going after these guys. The macho standoffs that happen between them, I could say yay or nay about, but I do know that packs of wolves are very sort of alpha male oriented, and
They are?
they do sort of what were they sort of displays of aggression or displays of territory or of I am the big alpha here, don't fuck with me sort of behaviors.
Yeah.
So when watching the movie, I was sort of expecting the wolves to be like monstrous, like creatures.
Yeah.
But I actually thought that they were very realistically rendered and quite frightening.
Yeah.
And I would not agree that it was an unfair portrayal of wolves. Even in Saskatchewan with coyotes, if you've ever tried to, sleeping in a tent camping, listening to all these coyotes making the terrible chatter outside, it's horrifying. And I know I have family who have farms around here. The coyotes will try and lure the dogs off of the farm to go chase them in the fields, and they will rip them to pieces for fun.
Yeah.
And those are coyotes, which are like the baby version of these wolves who make their living in, the northern winter, the practical eternal winter that is the Canadian North. So, yeah, over and above trying to stay alive in this horrible climate, having to deal with these wolves, like the dramatic stakes are right away super high.
They are.
We sort of center ourselves with the Liam Neeson character, whose job it was to protect these workers while they were on the rigs, and takes it upon himself to continue doing that job in this scenario. And beyond that, we have our group of somewhat types, although I think fairly well rendered. There's the sort of belligerent, difficult guy who is making things worse at every step of the way. And there's the sort of silent, bookish, peaceful guy who's, there's people who panic, and there's people who are followers, I gotta say, the production and the acting, solid all the way through this movie.
Yeah.
And it's one of those movies that made me feel cold while I was watching it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like they were this was a shot on location movie. They weren't faking it.
Yeah.
And I really respect that, as if it's a much more difficult feat of filmmaking, and it also gives the film a much more genuine feel than it otherwise would have had, and that some would argue maybe it deserves. So I'm a fan of The Grey. Although I might argue that it's not about man versus wolves. I think that this is basically man versus death. I think that this movie is about how people try to face the fact that there is a 100% mortality rate. And we know that. We all know that. But we go through our days, not worried about dying. And if you're put in a position where death is in front of you, how will that change you? What do you think of The Grey, girl?
I also really, really liked this movie. I thought, like you said, the acting, super solid throughout the whole entire thing. Visually, yes, the wolves were right on par, I thought. I did have a lot of issue. Like you said, it did cause a lot of controversy, including with the reintroduction of Alaskan wolves to Idaho.
Right.
There were like mass killings, and people were like super freaked out after this movie, and there were like a lot of protesting and just a lot of bad press for wolves as a result of this movie. And there's a lot of really big natural behavior inconsistencies. Like, they're not revenge creatures.
Right.
They're more likely to scavenge than they are to hunt because it expends less energy.
Easier meal. Go for the easy meals.
Absolutely. There was this point where the character Diaz was
the Cooper character.
The Cooper character. He was being fucked with, which they will do to try and identify weaknesses. But once they have their first kill, they're not going to continue to hunt the rest of the people because they are generally really shy creatures and will light, sound, anything like that, they will shy away from and they will run away from.
Yeah.
They're not seek and destroy type creatures. They're just not.
I kind of feel like the movie covered that point pretty well for me because Liam Neeson sees in the distance a tree line and says, well, we're out in the middle of nowhere. If the wolves don't kill us, the elements will. We have to head for the tree lines.
Yeah.
And by making that decision, which makes sense, they were going closer to the wolves' den. They moved themselves towards where the wolves' base of operation was.
Which they did not know. And
they didn't know they were doing that, but that is another reason I think that the wolves continue to fuck with them. Because instead of fucking off and leaving, they came closer to home. With the den thing and defending territory thing, absolutely. But wolves will also generally hunt out in the open. They will very rarely hunt in the forested area because they need the speed is what they need. So I did have some problems, and really the amount of backlash as a result of this movie towards wolves was just astounding. And I can't really blame the movie though. I think that's people making a mountain out of a molehill.
As people do, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
The only time I remember sort of thinking, I don't know if I buy that. There's one scene you were talking about where Diaz is challenged. The wolves seem to think that Diaz is the alpha because he's always making the noise and fighting with Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
And so he says the alpha basically sent his second in band to test Diaz.
Yeah.
And he's specifically attacked. They kill the wolf and fucking decapitate it and throw the severed head back at the wolves. And that seems to be an instigating measure, right?
It does seem to be.
That was the one plot point where it's like, I don't know a lot about wolves, but that doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah.
But everything else being so good. And because, like I said at the beginning of the review, I don't think this movie's about wolves necessarily. I think this is about dealing with death, about the facing it.
Yeah.
One of the characters in the movie, who is played by Dermot Mulroney, sort of the bespectacled, sort of the guy who seems like to play a stereotype, who seems too smart to be working on an oil rig.
Are you sure Dermot Mulroney? I thought the guy from The Walking Dead seemed like the really smart one to me. Whatever his name is.
We're going to do a lot of editing.
Henry.
He played Dallas Roberts.
Dallas Roberts.
But he was sort of like the Zen guy to me. He was very like sort of the peaceful dude. Hey guys, we got to work together. We got to get along.
Yeah.
Dermot Mulroney's character has this speech where he says, you know, we survived this crash, so it means something.
Yeah.
You know? But it doesn't. You know, not necessarily. Yeah. They were dead in a lot of ways the second that the plane went down.
It's like if it's your time, it's your time.
His putting the import on the fact that they survived, you know, was his putting the importance on it, you know. But you know, if the wolves see the opportunity, you know, he's out of the game, and he takes a bad fall and is broken at the bottom of a tree, and the wolves take him.
Yeah.
His surviving the plane therefore didn't have meaning.
No, not at all.
Arguably.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson, his character, keeps on flashing back to this beautiful woman laying in bed, trying to keep him calm and talking to him and telling him it's going to be okay. We imagine it while we're watching it, or at least I did, that this was his vision of what was waiting for him back home, trying to talk him through it, telling him not to be afraid.
Yeah.
We find out that this is his wife who has died, and that he was in fact suicidal. Of all the members of the group, you would think he would be the least willing to survive, since he was pretty much willing to blow his own head off earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
And yet
there's a difference
seems to be the
choices,
most driven
though.
to live.
Yeah.
Diaz, the Cooper asshole character, who was just, fuck you guys, everything you're doing wrong. If you want to live, you got to listen to me.
Yeah.
He's the guy who says, I quit, and sits down and says, I quit. Because when given, when he convinces himself that no, he can't avoid death.
Yeah.
He's not going to fight it. He's not going to prolong it. He's practically welcome it.
Kind of makes sense, though. Most really angry, belligerent people, I'm pretty sure, are very unhappy in their lives.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
But the bullet point for all of the characters that go through, you know, the Zen fellow, he does nothing wrong. He does everything right every step of the way.
Yeah.
Gets his foot caught under a log and drowns.
Which was an excellent death scene.
Brutal, heartbreaking moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was like the best death scene of the movie.
But again, nobody is spared. Because in the end, nobody is spared.
Yeah.
That's the brutal truth.
Very insightful, Larry Parsons.
It's how you choose to deal with that.
Yeah.
And most people choose to deal with that by not dealing with it. Yeah. By pretending that we're not going to die. We are immortal beings. And I'm not even talking about the soul going on and on, which is a totally different conversation.
Yeah.
I'm talking about most people don't face the fact that someday their body is not going to work and it's going to rot away into nothing.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you dwell on that, though, you see kind of the futility.
Mad. You'll go mad.
Yeah,
But at some point you have to face it.
Yeah,
Everybody does. And I think not facing it your whole life is maybe not necessarily helpful.
No.
Sometimes you got to look at the dark corners, and you got to be real.
Exactly.
I can see a lot of people watching a movie like The Grey and saying, what was the point of this? what was the point of this? Well, because in the end, spoilers, what happens?
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies. The wolves win.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. But again, I don't think it's about wolves.
The wolves, the wilderness themselves. Or death against themselves, rather.
But they, I guess, if their lives have more significance or less than anyone who died on the plane, they were more in a position to choose how they were going to go out than anybody who was just in the plane and was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yep.
But I don't know. I felt a larger level of storytelling was going on in this movie than a lot of the movies we're talking about on this list.
I agree.
And the production values and the acting, big points. Big points. So if they fudged some of the wolf behavior, I'm going to give them a pass on that. And I will blame the media for making a mountain out of a molehill out of this movie. This is a movie.
It is a movie.
It's a really good movie. I like it a lot. I would encourage people to watch it.
Me too.
But I tell you, when you're coming into it, this is it wasn't advertised as a horror movie, but this is a fucking horror movie.
It is.
It's scary, and it makes you think about stuff that
it does.
It's hard.
Yeah, I agree.
Let the wolves be. We're not supposed to be there.
Exactly.
They're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
If we're there and they eat us, that's kind of our fault for being there.
There you go.
Now, I might not feel that way while I'm being pulled apart by the wolves.
Sure.
And they didn't choose to come there. The plane fell out of the sky.
Yes.
But that's the way I see that. Evil intent or no, the wolves were being wolves.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, but again, the seek and destroy mentality of the wolves. Same with the bear in the Edge. They just wouldn't do that, I don't think.
I don't know so much about bears. I find it more believable in wolves than in bears. But
possibly.
I will not comment because I am not in the know.
I actually know a fair bit about wolves, so yeah, I don't know. It just made me angry. And not at the movie. The movie was great. I really have hardly anything bad to say about the movie aside from the hype.
Unfortunate repercussions.
Exactly. Which, again, I agree was probably media and human stupidity.
Yeah. People would argue the same thing with Jaws, right?
Yeah.
When Jaws came out, people stopped going to the beaches.
Oh, exactly.
And people started just killing sharks on sight and getting high fives all around for it. And killing the top predator in the ocean is having some negative repercussions to this day that you could maybe blame on Spielberg. But let's be real, it's not Spielberg's fault, it's ignorance.
It is.
We can blame ignorance.
Yes, for most things in life. We can blame ignorance,
See how rich this movie is? The conversation it has engendered, unreal.
Perfect.
All those security scenarios we ran, I'm smack in the middle of one we didn't think of.
Can anybody hear me?
Let's go!
Shh. Did you guys hear that?
Okay, K2, it's now time for you and I to disagree about snakes on a plane.
There you go.
Speaking of sharks, we were just talking briefly about Jaws. The director of this, David R. Ellis, did a movie called Shark Night that I reviewed in my shark episode.
Like night as in N-I-G-H-T or K-N-I-G-H-T?
No, N-I-G-H-T, I'm pretty sure is what they're going for.
I'm disappointed at that.
I don't know if he got the gig because he was really good at making animal movies, but I think that Shark Night, as bluntly simple as it is a superior movie in many ways to Snakes on a Plane.
All right.
Now, people are going to say, like, how can you hate Snake on a Plane? And hate is a strong word. I wouldn't necessarily use the word hate, but it's just being a goofy movie. All it wants to be is a dumb as shit Snakes on a Plane movie. Let it be a dumb as shit Snakes on a Plane movie.
Exactly.
And I would. Except for I don't think it knew it was a dumb as shit Snakes on a Plane movie until the media sort of got hold of it. They heard about this movie in production and they were like, did you hear that they're doing this Snakes on a Plane movie with Sam Jackson? That sounds awesome. Because they reshot a bunch of sequences made to secure an R rating. They added the sex scene in the bathroom,
Yeah.
and the of course line, "I'm sick of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane," to basically accommodate what the people were expecting.
I did not
But
know
I think
that.
what the people were expecting was not the movie that was being made.
No.
In fact, this movie takes itself pretty fucking seriously for
It
a
does.
movie that is as stupid as it is. And that disjunction I find problematic. If it was just, we're a stupid snakes on a plane movie and let's be dumb and have fun, then great. Or if it's, we're going to try and make this a seriously scary movie because two of the biggest fears people have are flight and snakes. We're going to put them in one movie. I think that it'd be easier to go light with it. I don't know it's easy to make a plausible movie about snakes on a plane, but I think you got to pick a road. And because this movie didn't, it is all over the place.
Yeah.
And because it's all over the place, I don't fully endorse it.
Okay.
But that's me. My other big beef is just the amount of CGI in it from shot to shot.
Yeah.
I know that they're not going to use real snakes around the actors, and we'll have to sort of take what we can get. But just the way they moved seemed too quick and just not real. It seemed movie snake.
Yeah.
You know? And that, again, made it not as scary to me.
Okay.
There are things that I like about the movie. There are very amusing moments to it, and, you know, I guess I could say the plot. Some kid witnesses a murder and is under the protection of Sam Jackson and his partner, and he's got his fingers in a lot of pie, this criminal, because he seems to know exactly where this kid's going to be, and somehow manages to put an entire crate, like huge vast crates of snakes, feed them with some kind of, what was it, endorphin or pheromones that would make them act like snakes on crack and be super aggressive, which the movie at least admits that snakes aren't, as a rule, like that. They're not going to just slither up and bite you. You're gonna have to engage them in some way to provoke that attack.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I've shown my hand of where I stand on snakes in a plane, but I please, like, I'm in the minority here, and this is a surprise to me, but I'm in the minority. People love snakes on a plane. So.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say that I love snakes on a plane. I did find it, like, laugh out loud amusing in parts. The one that I thought, they got the boob shot, the penis shot, they got the tongue, the eyeball, a bunch of necks, you know. Yeah, I found all of those thoroughly amusing. The woman in the muumuu who was being felt up and had like the saucy dream.
Yeah, that made me uncomfortable for some reason.
Yeah, a little bit uncomfortable.
I just didn't like that. I know what you're going for. That's supposed to be funny, but ew. Yeah,
there was the snake coming out of the folded, flattened
vomit
puke
bag.
Yeah.
See,
really?
Again, that was just. If the whole movie was like the Airplane template where they were going for the most obvious joke and ringing it as loudly as possible, I would have accepted that. But after they cut away from the vomit bag snake, there's a kid whose arm is swelling up and we're supposed to really fear for.
Yeah.
You know?
Which really, in real life, if like a kid that size being bitten, his arm would not swell up.
He would die.
He would die.
Yeah.
Like, and rather quickly.
Kids and old people are the typical, same thing we talked about with spiders.
Yeah.
Are the people who will tend to die from a snake bite.
Exactly, yeah. And I did, you know, they got some things right, like the, what do you call it? Ophidiophobia is actually the fear of snakes.
Okay.
Yeah. They got it kind of right with the talking about the antivenom stuff, that some antivenoms do have to be specific
to the snake.
However, if you have snakes that, like, they're just breeds apart rather than species apart, then it's, you know, you can get away with using just a blanket antivenom and it should be fine and dandy. But and the guy throwing the dog at the giant snake.
Oh, yes.
That was mean.
Animals don't fare well. I also wanted to mention the dog in Rogue that got munched after finding Rada Michelle. That pissed me off.
Yeah.
Kill all the people you want. Leave the dogs alone.
Exactly.
Horror movies and dogs.
Yeah.
Show me more horror movies where they kill a cat.
Exactly.
How many times have you seen a cat get killed? Mix it up, you guys. Anyway.
I'm a cat person. I'd rather that not happen.
Rant over. A couple of highlights that I will say about the movie that helped me get into the movie. David Koechner plays the co-pilot, who's like this sexist kind of pervy jerk-off.
Yeah.
And yet is also weirdly heroic in the way he deals with things.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he had an amusing performance.
Yeah.
And sort of horror movie and just general movie stalwart Lin Shaye plays Grace, sort of the eldest of the cabin crew, who sacrifices herself to save a baby from a snake.
She does.
And again, that was a fairly good scene, but it seemed to belong in a different movie. When a few scenes ago, we were watching a guy get bit on the penis with a snake, and now this woman's sacrificing herself to save a baby, and we're supposed to, reconcile these two scenes in the same movie.
The penis with the classic quote, "Fucking snake, get off my dick!"
Yeah, in case we didn't realize it. Yeah, the
exactly.
snake has got his penis, everyone.
Go figure. That's funny. Yeah, it's like, as far as what you were saying about using that as a way to get to your target, that's a pretty offshoot thing to do. Like, how do you know that the snake is going to get your intended target?
Well, they were going to take down the plane. That was the theory.
With
Nobody
snakes.
on the plane was going to survive.
It's a pretty drastic move, don't you think?
Are you picking plot holes and snakes on a plane?
A little bit. Yeah.
I want to say more positive things about it because I know I opened up being super negative. No movie ever has been hurt by the presence of Samuel L. Jackson. I like me some Sam Jackson.
Okay.
And I also find him an inspirational figure in that he didn't really see the bulk of his great success until he was in his 40s. He's sort of like a late bloomer in that respect. And he and Liam Neeson are like these 60-year-old action stars, the way no actress can ever be, unfortunately.
No, it's very, very true. Yeah.
I'm not defending that. I'm just stating it as a fact.
Yeah.
And he does do a fairly good job. Again, he's playing it very seriously for the most part. Yeah. And that's why when those added scenes where he says, "I'm sick of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane," don't seem to read as well. The scene where he talks about his partner being like the hardest dude he'd ever met. He's worked with him for 10 years, and that guy he's trying to say this to comfort them, but they set it up so that when that guy is absolutely horrified of the snakes and he dies with his last words being "good luck," that was supposed to be like a huge beat. And because the movie was all over the place, I wasn't sure if that was a suspense moment or a laugh line.
Yeah, I guess you could take it either way, really.
It's true.
It's true. That's funny. A really good death scene in that, though. The high heel through the ear. That would have sucked.
Yes.
And I'm sure he wouldn't have been screaming. Because, I think they were fairly high heels. So he probably would have been dead pretty instantly. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Can I enter the racist portion of my review?
Do it.
With the exception of Samuel L. Jackson, I was greatly irritated by every other African-American character in the movie.
Yeah.
Not because they were African American, but there was like the music mogul who treated his crew like shit.
Absolutely
and was flirting with the Paris Hilton archetype.
Yeah.
Didn't care about him, didn't like him.
No.
Didn't give a shit. Of all of his scenes, I was like, oh, him again. And then his little crew where the guy spends his whole life playing video games, which somehow makes him able to land this big jet at the end of the movie. Again, if you made it that far in the movie, I guess high fives all around. But I didn't find that character believable. The character seemed to be yelling, "Like me, like me, like me," and for some reason that was making me not like him.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because I sound like this total dick saying it, but with the exception of Sam Jackson, all those characters really bothered me. And
well, you can't really say that there was much character development in this movie at all.
I guess I shouldn't just limit it to the African American. I liked Lin Shaye and I liked David Koechner, but Juliana Margulies is like the main character, and I could tell you nothing about her.
Yeah. Except that this was shot before she started The Good Wife, and her character was quitting to become a lawyer.
What? It's the same character?
I know!
This movie just got better.
Nice. That's so funny.
You know what? I'm not going to tell anyone that they shouldn't see snakes on a plane. I mean, it delivers the promise of the title.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that it's longer than it needs to be. I think it's like an hour and 40 or 45 minutes, where 80 probably would have done it nicely.
Yes.
I think I might be a little bit harder on it because I think I wanted to like it more when I first got it. Like, I was like, yeah, this movie should be stupidly amazing, you know?
Yeah.
And it was stupidly all right.
That's really funny because I actually liked it more than I thought I would going into it.
Right.
I thought it was going to be one of those, like, I have no patience for that glib kind of just stupid comedy.
Right.
I had no patience for those kinds.
Right.
But I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Well, and again, just know what you're getting into. Just know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
I would have preferred, like I said, that they picked an alley. Because one scene they're serious, the next scene they're stupid doesn't necessarily work with me. If every scene was serious or every scene was stupid, at least I would have understood more where they were going for. But it's critic proof. It's like it's like another Halloween or Friday the 13th movie. People were going to watch this movie whether it was good or not.
Yeah.
So by all means, give it its day in court.
Just
and I'm not
because
saying
of
it's
the motherfucking snakes on the motherfucking plane line.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's like an F, an utter debacle, failure, terrible. And like I'm giving it like a 50%, like a just skating by.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Interesting.
But I don't know. For me, it's not my kind of animals eating people movie.
No, generally not mine either. And again, from a science bent, so many inconsistencies. And jumping to the end of the movie, they should have stopped it before they went surfing. I'm sorry, that like plummeted the movie for me. Really, really, they should have not done that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, and especially, the kid being protected. Or what did he say? What did you say to me when I first met you?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Stick with me and stay alive.
Exactly.
They also both got dates out of this horrible experience.
They did.
He got the number of the cute stewardess, and Sam Jackson. You got the feeling like he was going to hook up with
Juliana. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
In the end, they're all better people, except for us for watching it.
Exactly. Yep.
So, when animals attack,
yes.
Here it comes. I guess the beans have been spilled. You're not gonna be the winner in the 33rd episode of Rank and Review.
But I'm still the only champion.
But you're
so that's
still
all
the
that
reigning
matters.
champion, and I love you for doing it. Thank you so much. And as much as we may not agree on all these films, I don't think we're having any big scraps over them.
Although I did think that we would agree. I'm
really?
surprised.
Huh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, let me have it. Bring it on.
All right. Mostly because of the fact that I found it highly unmemorable was Rogue.
Wow. Okay.
This is my bottom.
Okay. Number 6.
Yeah. I don't know why. Perhaps it's been because it's been a while since I've seen it, or I didn't remember much about seeing the movie right after I saw it either.
Okay.
So for that reason, I ranked it on the
did not
bottom.
stick with you.
It did not. Next was Burning Bright. And I don't really have a good reason.
Something had to be in 5th space.
Something had to be in 5th. And yeah, Burning Bright is where it is. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'm going to say on Burning Bright.
It is what it is.
It wasn't a super catchy one. Same with the first one, I guess. It wasn't really that memorable for me. So, 4th
position
is Snakes on a Plane.
Snakes on a motherfucking plane.
Snakes on a motherfucking plane. Pardon me. Which Larry, you said earlier that you got this out of country.
Yeah, my friend Lee sent it to me from overseas.
There you go.
He likes to send me bad horror movies
There you
because he's
go.
my boy.
And on the cover, it does say Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson.
Yeah.
And it also does say, if you don't see this, you hate America.
Well, I have seen it.
Is
so
kind of
clearly I don't
awesome.
hate America.
Clearly
but
not.
yes, I do have a very nice DVD edition of Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I was expecting this to rank further down on the list.
Right.
But I did enjoy it more than I thought I would, which was a pleasant surprise.
Nice.
And however, it is ranked so low because I do agree with you that they couldn't really decide between serious and comedy. Next is The Birds.
Nice.
A lot of really good points about The Birds, and I still recommend seeing this movie. It is a classic after all. Yeah, the acting bothered me, but some of the bird stalking scenes were actually really frightening.
Yeah.
And I
the
can
concept
see...
is creepy.
The concept is fantastic, yeah. Seriously creepy. And one, Tippi Hedren as Stalker Woman.
Yes.
Bad on a couple points. Yes, her being a stalker, and she could be leading herself towards an evil dude.
Right.
You know, she knows nothing about this guy.
About him. Yeah.
Okay, so that was number 3.
Number 2.
Number 2 is The Edge.
Nice.
I would say despite the fact that Alec Baldwin is in it, but he actually did a really good job.
He is solid,
and I
man.
was depressed. Not depressed. I was impressed with him. Or depressed seeing him actually do well and shattering my image. Some bad points. Elle Macpherson, she really shouldn't be acting in anything.
She hasn't really done much before or since here.
No, she was on Friends.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, good for her. Great. Yeah, I don't know. I if you like bear action and seeing this particular famous bear, yeah.
Bart the Bear kills it.
Bart the Bear. Not really a recommended, not really a not recommended, but it did resonate more, I guess.
It stuck with you more than the rest of us.
It did, yeah. And, of course, number 1 is The Grey.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it caused so much havoc for the wolf populations of the world.
Poor wolves.
Yeah, I really did like it. Really good acting in it. A lot of plausible reactions and actions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, the wolves really do look pretty killer, so.
And the deaths are so felt in that movie.
They
Every
really
time
are.
somebody goes, you're like, oh, dude, that sucks.
Seriously. And the Walking Dead guy, Henry.
Yeah.
Seriously brutal death scene.
Yeah.
Really felt that
I want
death.
to say Dallas Roberts, I think.
Dallas Roberts, yeah. Yeah, really fantastic death scene.
Yeah.
Brutal. Jesus, yeah, brutal.
Man, just done nothing wrong. He'd done everything
Exactly. So yeah, that's my ranking, which I dare you to say otherwise.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to say a little bit otherwise. I think that there's only really like 2 that I think we're going to quote unquote strongly disagree on.
Okay.
And one of which I guess is my 6th place one, which is of course Snakes on a Plane.
There you go.
And this is an is what it is movie.
Yeah.
It delivers on its promise of Snakes on a Plane.
It
Sam
does.
Jackson is a great leading man, and he's got lots of charisma, and you want to cheer for him, and you want him to protect this kid. But I don't know. There's just too much in the brew here.
Okay.
So something had to be at the bottom. There goes Snakes on a Plane.
There you go.
By all means, watch it. If you're in the mood to watch something dumb, Snake on the Plane will fit the bill. We agreed that the 5th place goes to Burning Bright.
Okay.
I think that I liked it more than you did.
Yeah.
Like to me, it sort of felt, like I said, like an episode of The Twilight Zone, or just like a piece of an anthology series that you'd be watching on TV. Like, it almost didn't feel like a movie. It felt like an episode of television. And I consumed it as such, and it held my attention. And, it was all right.
Yeah, okay.
In 4th place, I put The Birds. Controversially, I guess. I think that time has made this a little bit dog-eared. The strength really is the concept.
Yeah.
And those 2 scenes that I talked about, the diner scene that leads to the explosion and the first full-scale attack of the birds, I think is great. And I just love the scene with the schoolhouse where leading up to it, with all the birds landing on the monkey bars, to the actual attack itself. Even though the special effects are greatly dated, I think it's quite a horrifying scene.
It is.
And what it implies about what they're up against is quite strong.
Yeah.
We didn't mention it in the review either, but the school teacher character,
Suzanne Pleshette.
Suzanne Pleshette, kind of felt it when she died.
Yeah.
We weren't privy to it. We didn't see it happen, but
Oh.
we knew that she died heroically, saving this little girl, and that she died being pecked to death by birds.
Pecked to death and unrequited, unrealized, in love with the guy that Tippi Hedren was stalking.
Yeah, she is kind of Stalker 2, the sequel, isn't she?
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
moved to this town to be closer to the guy that she knew she couldn't be with.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess 60s was a different time.
A little bit different, yeah.
All the way in third position,
Oh,
K2. I
dude.
put Rogue. And for me, I think this just way overexceeded my expectation of it.
Yeah.
That they spent that much time with the characters and that I didn't call bullshit on the decisions being made. And that even when people were being counterproductive, it didn't seem to service the plot. It seemed believable. The father figure who fucks up the rope bridge, you know, he made a terrible decision there, but his wife was dying and
Yeah.
he knew it. And he just wanted to get his daughter out of this place.
It is true.
And he made a really, really selfish and horrible decision, but it wasn't inexplicable. You know, it didn't come out of the sky. He just didn't decide, I'm going to make it harder for us people who are already in this terrible shape. Like I said in the review, the deeper into the movie, the more we start to lose that reality that is established.
Yeah.
But I thought that it was good enough. That it stuck with me. I
Okay.
liked it. I liked
Okay.
it. And I would also, this is probably one of my least favorite scenarios to be caught in of all of these movies. I think number one would be The Grey. That would be the worst scenario for me to be in. But that shrinking island, that ticking clock of the water closing in on you.
The
which is-
inevitability of death.
Ugh,
Yeah, okay.
We're agreed again on our number two. Look at us with the edge. Yeah, like I did have a few script issues with Mamet, like I seem to usually do, but I also sort of put that in my if I really like somebody, I'm almost more picky about it. And
Yeah.
that's where I'm with Mamet.
Okay.
I do like Mamet as a rule, so when I can see him something so close to something really, really good and just a little bit Mamet here and there, you need a little too much Mamet. You need to dial back the Mamet.
That's fine.
Especially, I find, when he directs them as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times if he writes a script and hands it out to someone else, it actually works out better than if he directs it himself, I think.
Okay.
But that's me and my complicated relationship to playwright David Mamet, who I never met. Number one, and I think soundly out of this group of movies, is The Grey.
Very right.
Because, like I said, as it is a movie about people being eaten by wolves. It isn't when animals attack. It's a worthy entry of this genre. But it aspires, I think, to be more than that. And the production value, there's nothing weak in it. All of these other movies, I will say, I liked, but.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, I liked, and I can't think of a real but to tell you.
Neither can I. No.
Like you said, maybe some of the wolf behaviors could be argued, but while I was watching the movie, I was totally in it. And I didn't.
Yeah.
That didn't break the spell for me. And like I said, the deaths in this movie was just so horrible. There's a scene early in the movie where Liam Neeson talks a guy through the experience of his death. His femoral artery has been cut and he's bleeding out rapidly.
Sad.
And there was nothing they could do but
Yeah.
basically talk him through it.
Yeah.
And as horrible as that scene was, that guy was probably granted the best death of the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Death is a very real thing. Like I said,
Yeah.
and to me, that's what this movie is about. And I don't know if it's optimistic or pessimistic, but it's real. You know?
Yeah.
So big points to The Grey. It surprised me.
Yeah, me too, actually. I wasn't... Liam Neeson...
From the director of The A-Team, I did not see this shit coming.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought that. Huh. Yeah. No, The Grey, definitely good, solid movie. Highly, I would recommend that. I have recommended that, actually.
We agreed it. See, we didn't agree on all these movies,
No.
but we agreed enough.
We agreed enough. Yes.
Thank you so much, K2, for coming for round 3.
My pleasure. And I'm looking forward to round 4 because I want to beef up my champion title.
Sweet.
Yeah,
if
and
you're a
make sure
two-time
no
winner,
one...
You may have this forever. This
Exactly.
may just be yours.
Exactly.
Well, until then, go.
Yay.
Be nice to the animals, kitties, and the animals will be nicer to you. So that puts episode 33 in the rearview mirror. 33 episodes and still only one winner. And K2, Karen Giese, managing to hang on to her role as our champion. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, you can get a hold of me at rankandreview@gmail.com, and I really would value some feedback. Feels good to know people are listening to the podcast, and to be honest, there has not been a lot of mail. Otherwise, find the show on Facebook, find the show on iTunes, and tell that other movie nerd in your life about the podcast. This is your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, saying thank you so much for listening.